Hi Chris, how are you?
Hi Rod, I'm very well. Here we are, recording a little bit early, all my fault because I'm going away tonight. But we are recording on the 19th of December. It's episode 152 and the weather's a little nippy.
A little nippy, it's awful here. We've got wind and sideways rain.
Yeah, you're down on the coast. I'm a little bit more inland. So for me, it's nippy. But I can understand it being a little chillier where you are. I'm hoping it all calms down because I have a flight tomorrow morning and I'm not a big fan of turbulence. So I'm hoping we have an easy takeoff.
Can I ask where you're going?
We're going to Finland for 4 days with the children. A bit of snowy stuff. We don't ski, so this will be our first cold holiday. We've never done a cold holiday, so I'm curious to see what that's like.
It's going to be a lot nippier where you're going, that's for sure.
Yeah, minus big numbers. So we've got thermals and warmers and stuff, and we get some stuff when we get there as well, I think, so that should be good.
It's very expensive to buy alcohol in Finland, so I hope you're not planning on drinking.
I'm not really a big drinker. I like a beer every now and again, but we're going away with the children, so it's not that kind of thing. But we may have a beer.
I still think you'll be thinking about sort of €15 for a small beer.
Yeah, wow, €15, did you say?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Maybe I need to start podcasting sitting down. That's a big number.
I know how expensive it was when I went to Sweden last time. Food and everything was fine, and as you'd expect. But as soon as you went near anything, even a small beer, glass of wine or something like that, it was very expensive.
Look, it's payday on Monday. I'm just going to have to go with the flow. Well, what can you do? We just want to have a nice holiday. Like I said, we might have a beer or two, but it's not going to be. It's not like a stag do.
You're not going on a sesh. Fair enough. Fair enough. Should we do some follow-up? Let's
get into the follow-up.
So first story, this was just breaking as we were about to start recording, actually. Breaking in inverted commas, because this is an ongoing story between Apple and the EU. This is dropped on i5 Mac. The EU wants Apple to ensure effective interoperability of iOS with other platforms. So that's not a surprise. This is what they've been talking about for some time. But the deadline for Apple to be compliant with this is early January, so obviously the EU are underlining the fact that they want Apple to be doing this kind of stuff, and they see all the interference and things, such as not notarizing apps and alternative app stores and all that stuff that's been going on. The deadline is January the 9th, 2025. And this is quite interesting that Apple feels, they've said in a statement, it's becoming personal. The situation is becoming personal, which of course Apple's going to say because they've been dragging their feet doing this. Yeah, they've made a little bit of effort about app stores and a little bit of effort but with the notarization thing, with the anti-steering rules, with all the other stuff that's still going in the background. I think this is a legitimate axe to grind for the EU.
I think it is. I can see why Apple feels it's personal because they're really going for it. But Apple, you've had years to be the bigger person in the room and to have a better moral compass with some of these things. I am seeing it though. I think I commented to you just as we were talking before the show, you can import and export your data in Safari now, which I don't think that was there before. And they are doing a lot of it. You can now have default apps and things like that. They are chipping away at it. I just wish they wouldn't just do it for the EU. Just it makes sense in the EU. Do it everywhere. I just don't understand. But obviously they're going to topple one region at a time, I think.
Yeah, and we missed a load of stuff last week when we were talking about Tim Cook being on the Ted Lasso set or drinking in the Ted Lasso pub. He also met Keir Starmer when he was in the UK. He met the King when he was in the UK. There was lots of stuff. And I feel like Apple are sort of doing a real PR run on the fact that the UK isn't the EU. But then you look at what the EU is doing, and I can understand why Apple feels a bit aggrieved by this because it might be getting in the way of them making money. And I think to a lot of Apple consumers, Apple are doing the right thing. They're our champions of privacy. They're looking out for us. Look how they took a stand on Meta and Google and them sort of mining your contacts and doing all this kind of stuff. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Meta probably could make a better app if they were allowed to run things in the background and do exports out of it, as could every other app developer. It's quite restrictive. We've talked before about how the Mac allows you to do, well, as long as you're not in the Mac App Store, allows you to do all sorts of things in the background, and it trusts you as a user. If you ignore all the things and want to get on with it, more power to you. And why the phone should be magically different. I've stored my credit card on my computer. I've got pictures of my passport and various secure drives around the place in case I lose it while I'm away. How is that any less secure than what I do on my phone? So it's a specious argument by Apple to keep bringing this up, and frankly they should just knuckle down and get on with it because it's going to cost them a lot of money in the long run. It's
going to cost them money, credibility. They keep saying they're the company doing the morally right thing, and then with some of this they're not, and I just think they're not always getting that balance right, are they? And look, I do wonder, would life have been different if they had invested in the iPad and it won out and the Mac actually ended up going away and we actually had a modern OS that could do all these things, would we have been in a different world? I don't know.
I don't know either.
But that world didn't play out, so we are where we are. Apple needs to get on with it, I think. I think they are trying to... I do like some of the guardrails they have in place on the iPhone. They are here to protect us, the sandboxing, etc., but they've gone too far, and they need to... There's a balance, and they've gone too far at controlling, and they need to just dial it back quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, guardrails you can put down is what you want.
That's true. And you can opt in and out of them, but you are right.
Yeah, if you want to throw your ball in the gutter, you should be able to. Moving on, this is something we commented on last week as well, that the new iPadOS and macOS betas don't have the redesigned Mail app. We knew this. This is just confirming that even the most up-to-date version don't.
Yeah, well, I think we were saying about it for 18.2, which is just released. Now 18.3 has come out, and it's still not in there. And I don't think there's really anything in 18.3. There's certainly nothing that's made me want to install it. So it feels like this is maybe just a little bug fix update that's going to ship before they do another big update, I guess, which will be 18.4 at some point. So I wouldn't recommend anybody install this. Why run a beta over Christmas if you're traveling?
Yeah, madness. Another thing that's madness, and this probably upsets you more than anything, is that the AirPods Max, which as far as we could make out, the only change was USB-C on the new versions of the AirPods Max. It's missing something else quite important too.
Yeah, you can't plug in USB-C to stereo jack cable for using them like I'm talking to you now with my Sonys on. I just think this is... Why would they do this? I don't understand. Apple, you made a pretty good set of headphones. You did nothing with them for 4 years apart from just change the connector and take away a piece of functionality, and they still cost £500. I don't know what world this made sense. They were expensive 4 years ago. They're now even more expensive for what you're not getting.
Yeah, they're actually making them worse, is what they're doing with this. Fair enough, they've got the desirability of a slightly better connector, but to actually take away functionality on headphones that don't fold are expensive, and they haven't appreciably improved the audio off. They've made them worse.
Yep, and they are heavy. After wearing these for a long period of time, I feel how heavy my AirPods Max are. I'm actually going to try and sell mine once I've cleaned them up, because they retail, I'll get a couple £100 for them, which is pretty good.
I think that's very telling that, I started with Sony's, you've ended up with Sony's, and you loved your AirPods Max, and the fact that they're going away, that's quite sad, actually, Chris. They didn't need to do much to keep you on board, did they? Bit lighter, slightly better.
Bit smaller, yeah. USB-C.
Better adaptive audio, that kind of stuff, good to go.
Just give me all the stuff AirPods Pro do. I just find it really bizarre. They've just done nothing. It's very strange.
Very strange. Another thing that's probably not so very strange, and I've just realised we're featuring a lot of stories from 95 Mac and one after the other, but that's okay, is that most iPhone owners fail to see little or no value in Apple Intelligence, and I'm with them on this.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's interesting, but I did try something out. I send an email out to my team every Monday morning, just, what's coming up in the week, or a thank you for last week. And I actually ran it through Microsoft Copilot, and I ran it through Apple Intelligence. The text I'd written, just see how it would rewrite it. And it made a lot more words and a lot more emphasis on things. It had some good ideas, but actually Copilot and Apple Intelligence, very similar in what they suggested. But what annoyed me with both of them is they didn't highlight the bits they changed, or the bits that were original. I think that's my problem with it. And if you get it to proofread, it doesn't tell you what it's changed, or I just want it highlighted in a way I can see, oh yeah, that change makes sense, I'll take that one. But other than that, I didn't see a huge amount of value in it, and I've turned it on for my wife on her phone. She hasn't once commented on Apple Intelligence.
Yeah, I've been rapidly turning everything off when it came to the Mac in 18.2, frankly. I've been going through all the settings. I don't want Siri in my menu bar. I don't want this, I don't want that. And I think we're very much in line with what other iPhone users are saying. I mean, smartphone users in general are unsatisfied with the existing AI features, as the survey recorded 73% of Apple Intelligence users and 87% of Galaxy AI users stating the new features to be either not very valuable or they add little to no value to their smartphone experience. And actually, I think as we discussed last week with the notifications and everything that comes along, in many ways it's made it worse.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's I think I said it last week, where you're interacting with Siri on different devices now, it looks different. You've lost that consistency. I think it's bad watching Apple try and make up. Maybe they should have waited another year and actually got it fully baked, because June isn't actually that far away now.
I think from investors, they were being seen in a bad light, that they weren't jumping on this AI train, this LLM train. So they just, they've I wouldn't say they've sold the company because it's worth far too much money for that. And they haven't even bet the company, but they've put a decent stake in Apple Intelligence being the big thing. All the iPhone 16s, all the new devices, they even got Keir Starmer to talk about how amazing Apple Intelligence was. When Tim Cook was here last week. And I'm like, it's really... just focus on the devices, Apple. That's what you're good at. And that integrated software experience, which they should allow others into, as we've talked about before, is what Apple is good at. Good hardware, decent software, works well together. If you want to bring Sony headphones to the mix, crack on. But this sort of exclusionary Apple Intelligence is the answer to everything. It's going to improve your life. The nasty advertising we've seen from them, I think this is a wrong horse they've bet on here.
They need to do Apple Intelligence. They were already late. But why not be a bit later and get it a bit righter? Because it was the same with big iPhones back in the day. They were super late to the party, but they got it right. And we all waited. And did they lose market? I don't know. But they didn't lose market in the end. So why not take the same approach? Apple famously takes that approach. But for whatever reason, this is the first time they've announced stuff that they haven't released. And it's just strange for Apple to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Something that's not so strange for Apple to do is to be non-committal about Linux. We've talked before about Asahi Linux, which is a remix of Fedora to run on Apple Silicon Macs. So if you do want to get your nice Linux fix running on your Mac, you don't fancy macOS for reasons like it may be inconsistent copying files about, as I discovered to my cost this morning. You can now install Fedora 41 remix available on your Mac, your M1 and M2 Macs. I think it's up to M3s these days as well, but not M4, so you can't go and do that there. One nice thing about this is if you had, say, bought a new Mac Mini and you wanted to run it just as a server with, all the various Linux tools running on it, so it would boot that every time and have a consistent experience rather than needing to log into the GUI or whatever else the sort of restrictions that come with macOS, then you can do that with this too, and I think it's good to see that. This also brings with it all the gaming upgrades we talked about, like Vulkan drivers and all the rest, so you can actually run on many Windows games that wouldn't run on Mac, even on Crossover Office, directly inside of Fedora. So I think this is a good thing to see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting year next year. I think there's lots of talk about what Steam's doing, as we've discussed. It's going to be an interesting year, I think, with Linux-based devices, I think.
Very much so. Year of Linux desktop at last, maybe.
Or handheld.
Not happening. In other news, and speaking back to AI, ChatGPT has finally released its search engine to everyone. So if you're a logged in user, at least as far as I was, you can actually click a little web button and be able to search the web with ChatGPT. It works. It seems to work quite well. It refers to sources and things as you do it, which I was quite impressed by. So I did a little search on the Wake From Sleep podcast when I was trying it out this morning. And I think it got us pretty good, actually. Wake From Sleep is a podcast that delves into technology gaming with a significant focus on Apple products. Show is hosted by Rod Middleton, sorry Chris, who provides insights and discussions on the latest tech news. You can listen to Wake From Sleep on podcasts, and it gives references to where it's found all those things from with sources as well. So I thought that was decent.
I think it's decent, and you are the show host. You coordinate us, you get us there. So and you do all the work. So 100% on board with that.
So yeah, I think this is a decent search experience. It's relatively quick. It tells you where the search is coming from. Something I would never search for in normal life is Coronation Street. I have no interest in it at all. But it's done a little rundown on what Coronation Street is, recent developments on it, some articles that might be of use. I think it's an interesting search platform, and I understand why Google are running scared.
I understand it. I'm still wedded to my DuckDuckGo, but I need to start playing with this a little bit more, I think, and building up my comfort, because I'm not there yet.
I think you need to keep an eye on this stuff because for all the investment, and as we've talked about, Apple are obviously very interested in LLMs. Google are doing their side of it. ChatGPT are the leader. We talked about Sora last week. We can see what's going on. Search is a significant milestone for a company like that.
Yeah, because once you start going there for search, that's like their Trojan horse. You could then, I actually start getting comfortable with the generative stuff. So it's a good move of OpenAI's, to be fair to them. Very good.
An interesting move, and something we talked about way back when. It was about WWDC, I think, when they said new cameras were going to be available to take advantage of, immersive video. So in the same way that you've got immersive video on your the more modern iPhones, 15 and 16, 15 Pro Max and 16, you need the lenses side by side. Blackmagic at that point announced they were going to have a camera, and I think Canon have a lens. Anyway, should you choose to, you can go and drop $30,000 on Blackmagic's immersive camera.
That's a lot of camera.
It's quite an impressive looking camera. I got to give them that.
Yeah, it does look cool, but 30,000 is a huge amount of money. But it does look cool. Do you think we're going to see more of this, given the lackluster?
No.
Right, okay. It feels like 3D Blu-rays all over again.
But the world is littered with formats where they've tried to improve on something. Super audio CD, digital audio tape, Laserdisc. You can think of VHS, Betamax. There's always been the also-rans. I do think immersive video, unless Apple come out with another headset that more developers jump on for a price that isn't $3,500, and another manufacturer supports the video format. If Meta, for example, suddenly started shooting stuff in the same immersive video format, then I think they'd have a chance. Because there's lots of Oculus headsets kicking around the world that they could do something with. But just Apple by themselves, Apple TV Plus is not a big enough market for I don't know how much a Ultra 8K video camera would be normally, but I suspect it's not $30,000. Professional videographers they probably wouldn't think twice about spending $100,000 on a rig when you think of Marvel and billions on a film. But for a small indie, if you're going to pick one thing that you're going to shoot your cool new film on, you're not going to pick this camera. I mean, we talked last week about 28 years later using iPhones. An iPhone is probably good enough for most independent small filmmakers.
Yeah, and it's only getting better, isn't it?
It's only getting better. Interesting to feature, though, and nice to see a price on something like that, because until it's actually a product you can go and buy, it's all made up.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because often they announce it, and then does the product ever get launched? Sometimes they just disappear. So it's good it's out there.
Speaking of products disappearing, do you want to tell us about the iPhone SE?
Yes, the iPhone SE and the iPhone 14 are going to stop being sold, because there is a deadline in January where you've got to sell things with USB-C ports. I thought this was just for new devices. I didn't realise this was going to impact existing devices. So it's a bit of a shame. I mean, I'll be honest, at work we still buy iPhone 14s for everybody. They're a great phone. Even if we started buying 15s, we wouldn't get us Apple Intelligence. So we buy the 14 because they're at the right price point. So I'm a bit surprised. Obviously, this won't impact us here in the UK because we are womp womp, sadly not in the EU. But yeah, I'm surprised. I didn't realise this was going to retrospectively come back. I did. A friend of mine got me some hand warmers last night for my cold trip, and they gave them to me. And I was like, "Oh no, please don't let them be micro USB." And they gave them to me, and they're USB-C. Woo! So I was pretty happy with that. But I do think it is good. Everything's moving to USB-C. Do I think we should be chasing down, stopping selling existing products? I don't know. I'm probably a bit conflicted on that.
I don't know, really. I mean, I presume it still comes with a cable in the box. Anybody who's buying an older iPhone, it's 2 generations old at this point, an iPhone 14, and I think the SE is 3 or 4 generations old at this point. So I don't think you're missing that much. I guess the funny thing is it still being made as a new product? If they had lots of stock lying around, they could probably claim that it's being, it's existing product and they're cleaning out the lines. But Apple actually still make iPhone SEs, don't they, with lightning connectors? This is probably why they changed. The only reason they changed the keyboards and things like that too is because if we're actually selling new products in the EU, they've got to be USB-C. Yep. And again, they could have got with this program 5 years ago. We wouldn't be having this discussion.
Agreed. Very slow. I agree with you on the iPhone SE. That should go away. It's more the 14. I think it's still a pretty good phone.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It is a pretty good phone. I think that's all we've got in follow-up. Should we crack on and do some news?
Yeah, let's do it. That was quite a bit of follow-up, I think.
There's more follow-up than news, I think. And sticking with 9to5 Mac and sticking with Apple plans for things, or lack of plans in this case. This story surprised me slightly. So this is a report from Bloomberg that Apple has scrapped plans to offer an iPhone hardware subscription service. It's a bit of a non-story. This wasn't a thing, and now it's a thing that's going away. So if you'd ever had the thing, can it go away? I thought Apple did something like this. I thought they had an iPhone purchase program. They
did. But it was more, you buy an iPhone, you keep it for 2 years, and you pay for it over 2 years. Because I've done that in the past. So I kind of thought this was a bit odd. I think maybe this was more of like your Netflix, you're paying £20 a month forever. And I guess when a new phone comes out, you just get it, and you drop the old one back. So maybe it was slightly different in the mechanics of it. Odd they've stepped away from it, because even if it was expensive, it'd be interesting to see what the take-up would be. For somebody like, just give me a phone that's fully insured, and if I do anything with it, I literally just come into one of your stores and you just give me another one and I walk out. Because it's so easy to switch between phones. And when the new model comes out, I just come in the store and I get a new one, and I pay you £60 a month. So, I'm picking a random number. But some people would pay for that.
Yeah, I wonder how that would work, though, because we know what iPhone launch day is like at the best of times. Anybody who's they paid their subscription yesterday, they expect to get the new phone on day one when the new phones come out, they go in and they're not allowed to. So immediately you're going to have a bunch of annoyed customers who aren't able to have the new thing. And then there's the breakage aspect of it as well. I don't know about you, but I look out there in the world and lots of people run around with cracked screens.
It's definitely better than it used to be.
I don't disagree that it's better than it used to be. I think the technology's improved. See Corning being investigated by the EU. But it's still a factor that people drop their phones, they chip the phones, crack the screens, crack the backs, all the rest of it. If you're paying your £60 a month to have your iPhone, what happens? Do you get 2 drops over that period of time? How much does that cost?
Yeah, I guess there's some nuances. They've probably got a massive spreadsheet with it all modelled out in. But I'm still surprised they're not doing it, because it felt like they were nearly doing it. So I'm surprised they're not going to do it. And it's another services revenue. So yeah, obviously, maybe they've run the numbers and it isn't worth it and they're happy with where they're at.
Maybe they are. A company that is finally happy with where it's at is Seagate. So Seagate, makers of hard drives and SSDs, major competitors are Western Digital and increasing numbers of Chinese manufacturers as well. But for a long time, Seagate hard disks have been relatively trustworthy, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So as with all things, there are a number of segments in the market. There's cheap end, and then there's the high end, and then there's the enterprise. And in order to keep storage amounts going up, they've always invested in new kinds of technology to keep the spinning rust going, really, particularly in the face of SSDs. Anyway, 10 years ago, or maybe even 20 years ago, Seagate began working on a heat-assisted magnetic recording technology, which would be a new way of putting data on the platters effectively within hard drives. Long story short, what this lets you do is have 32 terabyte hard drives. So if you're feeling a bit low on storage, potentially you could buy in a single hard drive 32 terabytes of data.
It's a lot of data. Could you imagine how much Apple is going to charge for 32 terabyte drive built in, because their pricing is ridiculous? Look, this is fantastic, and we're going to need more of these. As we've got big AI models, big data centers, you're going to need more condensed storage, because otherwise they're just going to grow exponentially in physical size. So this looks, I'm not surprised this is where we're heading, but 32 terabytes, that's impressive.
It is, and as somebody who buys a fair few hard drives because they fail occasionally, or I get bored and I moved on to my next network attached storage, or I'm trying to save power or whatever it is, I'm always quite interested in hard drive technology moving along. And as I tend to buy refurbished second-hand drives, which by the way is probably a bad idea because they've probably been sitting in a data center for 50,000 hours running, but I got to say, out of the 12 drives I've bought most recently, only one has failed in the last 3 years, and they're all refurbished drives. So I bought 10 terabyte drives for £94 a drive, which feels like good value to me.
100% agreed.
So, I think this balance between, if I'm a big corporate customer and I need the storage, and let's face it, the world needs more storage all the time, it seems to me. Netflix, the BBC, our own personal file stores. This podcast generates gigabytes of data. So it's all got to go somewhere, and you want it to be backed up and all the rest of it. So this is a good move. It's nice to see this technology continues to grow. Who'd have thought, 40 years ago, whatever, when I got my first PC with its 40 megabyte hard drive, that I'd be sitting talking about 32 terabyte hard drives. It's amazing.
Yeah, I had 125 meg in my first PC in the early 90s.
Yeah, you're a little bit younger than me, but these things move on, don't they?
It is interesting. You can age somebody by the size of hard drive they first had.
That sounds like an innuendo in there somewhere. I'm moving swiftly along. Did you see the story about Honda and Nissan?
Yes, but I thought, aren't Nissan and Renault, and aren't they all in bed with each other? So now they're going to get together with Honda. So Honda and Nissan explore merger to navigate an uncertain EV future. So it just blew my mind a little bit, if I'm honest. Yeah,
this feels like two empires coming together. Japanese companies are famously hostile to each other, and you believe in your own corporate culture. If you worked at Sony, going to Nintendo was almost it's just unthinkable. And certainly I know from my experience, but my knowledge of the motorcycle racing world, Honda for a long time would not accept a Yamaha engineer, and vice versa, because they were so embedded in the way that they do it. In fact, the racing divisions have only recently allowed Europeans to start taking control of some of the engineering decisions within the companies. They're sort of so wedded to their corporate culture. So when you see something like this, that Honda and Nissan, two large automotive corporations who've been running for very long times, both of them, are even thinking about something like this. This is incredible.
And if you look at the second paragraph, they're also discussing plan to pull Mitsubishi in as well, which I don't know. It just feels insane to me. But I think this is where they are struggling with the challenger brands. Obviously, you've got Tesla, which is less of a challenger brand now. It's pretty established, but they've obviously highlighted BYD as well in the mix. And we're seeing it in this country a lot more Chinese imported cars, being distributed. And so I think they are struggling with these more sort of challenger upstarts that are just EV only platforms that haven't got all the legacy that they're carrying with them, all the legacy craft, I guess. So it's interesting.
It is interesting because I'd say Nissan had a real head start here. The Nissan Leaf was probably the flag bearer for lots of electric vehicle owners, and certainly in Europe and the UK.
It was the Leaf in their Prius, wasn't it? They were the starlets, I guess.
Yeah, so Toyota made the Prius, which was a hybrid and still is a hybrid. It's not an electric vehicle.
But it was way ahead of its time, though, wasn't it? And then it felt like they got a lead. And then BMW did the i8 and the i3, really early doors, and then did nothing else. And I think this is a problem. A lot of companies did a bit and then nothing. And then Tesla's just come in and shown them how to do it.
Yeah, and Honda, I think, have really struggled from an EV point of view. So if anything, I'd say in the EV world, Nissan is the stronger partner in this. But Honda make fantastic vehicles, very reliable vehicles.
So I live not very far from Honda's UK plant, which is being demolished because Honda left the UK. The whole plant's gone. Everybody lost their jobs. It's really sad. And it was gargantuan, but they've left. I also live not far from what was Mitsubishi's headquarters. They left the UK in the pandemic because they are all struggling, whereas Tesla are opening more branches over here, and BYD have got a showroom in London, and it just goes to show the way it's going. A lot of the Japanese manufacturers sadly have reversed out of the UK, and challenger manufacturers have come in.
Yeah, I mean, this is the way the market works, though. If you think of the British car manufacturing in the 70s, it was the Japanese that came along and reduced British Leyland and Rover and all these companies to, if not nothing, then they went out of business because they made better, cheaper cars that were reliable and started every time you put the key in the ignition. And you couldn't say that in most of the British industry.
Sadly, I agree.
And I think the Chinese are I don't know if they're, I'm going to choose my words carefully. I don't know if they're any better than what the Japanese are offering, but they're certainly cheaper than what the Chinese are offering. And I think that's very compelling to people. In the same way, Lada in the 1980s came in and stormed the taxi market in the UK with Arriva because it was the cheapest car on the market, but then they fell apart very quickly. I don't think this will happen with Chinese vehicles. They're better made than any Russian car ever was at that point.
And they look good, and they're built to be an EV from the outset, and you're not trying to shoehorn in old company thinking into a modern platform. So now I concur with you. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, though, but it does feel like a lot of the big colossal car companies really struggle with the EV transition.
Very much. An agency that may not struggle with an EV transition, however, is when Trump takes charge. We're down to a month now before he becomes the next president of the United States. He's apparently going to block the government and military from buying EVs.
But yet, his best mate, Elon, I don't understand.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, does it? I don't know.
I think he's between the devil and the deep blue sea there. Elon is enough on board with what Trump is doing that he'll just accept whatever Trump's doing. And at the same time, he's promised to drill, baby, drill. So he's got to keep the oil companies happy and all the rest of it. So he'll just plough his own furrow. But I just think it is, after several years of the US sort of absolutely leading the world on the move towards EVs with Tesla and Lucid and Rivian and all these companies coming along, real sort of flag bearers for this, and now we're just going to go falling backwards, it would seem.
Yeah, it does feel like a massive backward step at a time when we don't need to be doing that. We need to be accelerating our transition, not decelerating. Excuse the car pun.
It is. And speaking of looking backwards, I don't know if you saw this story this week. We have Public Domain Day, which is when a bunch of intellectual property reverts to the public domain. So the big thing that happened last year was Mickey Mouse came into the public domain. So the original Mickey Mouse cartoon you were able to use however you wanted. We're having a similar tranche of materials this time on Public Domain Day, a bunch of films and books. So for example, The Maltese Falcon, All Quiet on the Western Front, all into public domain. You'll be able to just download and make use of that in any way that you will. I did find it quite interesting. There's some quite well-known books in the list and some not so well-known films, but I'm always amazed that we've now got to the point with film that much of it is entering the public domain.
Yeah, and I guess as the years tick on by, you're going to get more and more film because obviously more and more films were made from this point onwards. So yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't realised that.
It is, but the two that sort of stuck out to me were Popeye is now in the public domain, and so is Tintin.
I wouldn't have guessed that they had the same timeline, but obviously they were created at the same time. Wow.
Yeah, and a bunch of artworks as well, including as you scroll through this. I think is this Magritte's? Yeah, Magritte's the famous pipe image is now also public domain. So this is it's quite a tranche of stuff, like I say, that have come to that is now going to be available that you'll be able to download or obtain in however way you do without breaking copyright law. So this is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, but I wonder how much we'll actually see of it. If you know what I mean, how much will people use this content?
I would hope so. I think access to a book like All Quiet on the Western Front, particularly when there was a film of it 2 years ago that did extremely well, being able to access that in its original form, presumably in the original German or the initial English translation of it, is only good for culture and art around the world. In a time when you're being clamped down on, if you look how restrictive copyright has become, we've repeatedly featured it on this podcast in terms of games and films being taken away from people who've already bought them and all the rest of it. High quality works of art, which many of these things are, that are accessible, that are freely available, that you can download and educate yourself or learn something you didn't know about a period in history, I think is really important. Yeah,
no, that's fair. You're right as always, and I'm too narrow-minded. That's what I'm going to go with.
Not at all. I think we've run out of news. Should we turn to media?
Yeah, do you know what, though? It does feel like there's still quite a lot happening, even though places are shuttering down for Christmas and holidays and what have you. And I know it'll be more next week, but there's still been quite a bit happening.
Yeah, things are occurring, aren't they? Things are occurring. So let's do some media. And as I said that, I've thought of a little media story we should talk about as well. But two ones quick first. There's going to be a new Apple TV Plus movie starring John Krasinski and Natalie Portman, which apparently is fairly similar themes to Indiana Jones. This sounds quite exciting.
Two good actors. Slightly concerned Apple's making a film because they haven't done well in the film stakes, if I'm being honest. So, curious to see where this goes, but great cast, so let's hope they don't fumble it.
My concern with this is the director, who is Guy Ritchie. Now, I have a complicated relationship with Guy Ritchie. He has had a couple of really quite decent films. I liked Lock, Stock, I liked Snatch. I thought he did a good job with the Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr. I thought they were very good as well. Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare was not good.
I've not seen it, but I would concur with your statement. I quite like The Wrath of Man, which had Jason Statham in it. But I did not really enjoy Operation Fortune, which had Josh Hartnett in it, for example. I don't know. I think he's got an average batting score, I would suggest. You know, he's a 50-50. For me, he's not like Christopher Nolan, who's got like 100%, or David Fincher, in my view. But you know, they've got very high batting average. Whereas I think Guy Ritchie, sometimes he absolutely gets it, and other times falls a little bit short of the mark because he's got good high standards, I think.
I'm trying to think about that. I think that's probably mostly fair. He is definitely a good director when he puts his mind to it, and everybody's allowed misses. I mean, Ridley Scott's filmography is not hit after hit after hit. Very few directors have, and I don't think even Nolan has. I think Interstellar is challenging in lots of ways, unlike some of his other films. This will be interesting, I guess.
I'm definitely going to watch it, but it'll be interesting to see what the Rotten Tomato score is going to be afterwards.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. And the other part of this, of course, will be, as you say, what's the release schedule going to look like as well? Will it come to cinemas? Was it going to annoy yet another director and a pair of stars, or is this something going to be able to get on and do?
Yeah, or is it going to be at Apple's low quality threshold? That's my other concern, because they just don't seem to get their movies right, which is a shame because they've got a much higher quality threshold for TV shows, as our next story is going to tell us.
Yeah, just on that, before we move on to the next story, is that the first movie that I watched on Apple TV was Greyhound with Tom Hanks, and it should be a really interesting thing, but I just didn't feel it was very well done, and that theme has really continued with Apple TV's movies, with the exception of the one about Tetris, which I really liked.
That's fair, actually. The Tetris one was fantastic. But you're right, they need to shrug off the preconception that Apple films aren't fantastic. They need to get rid of that.
But the problem is they aren't fantastic.
But maybe this is the one. This is it.
This is what's gonna change things. Okay, one thing that the Apple TV have at least agreed that they are going to do is finish off the Silo drama. So I have watched the first season of Silo. I've watched the first 2 episodes of the next season of Silo. I think it's a very well told story. It's well acted. It looks terrific. All the money is on the screen, but actually the talent of everybody that's involved with it really shines through. So I've been very much enjoying Silo, and I think I've been saving it up to binge it as much as anything else, so I can just sit there and blast my way through it, which is what I did with the first season. Yep, they've agreed that they're going to put out 2 more seasons to close the story out, so this is good news.
Yeah, it's always good, I think, when they're going to complete the story. I was a little annoyed with Slow Horses in that they're going to squash 2 books into one series, and it's a shame because I think it'd be nice if they kept them going, because I really enjoy it and I want more of it, if anything.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And it's an odd decision when Slow Horses is definitely... It's interesting. A couple of people at work have had Apple TV subscriptions for some reason, the month free or 2 months free or whatever, with something that they've bought recently. I think Gusto has had a promotion on, or someone to give you 3 months of free Apple TV. Anyway, 2 separate people at work have asked me, I've got Apple TV for a month, what should I watch? And I put at the top of that list Slow Horses.
Yeah, Slow Horses. And then a little bit of Ted Lasso season 1 and you'll be good.
Yeah, I said just season 1. I said if you're going to watch Ted Lasso, just do the first season. And then for me, I think For All Mankind was the 3rd thing on the list.
Yeah, I could get behind that. I think that's fair.
Yeah. One of them was very, very into high concept science fiction, so I said he should check out Foundation. But Silo would have been...
to watch that too, man.
And then Severance, of course.
Oh, Severance, yeah. That's coming back for season 2 in the new year.
I'm very excited about that. That's one of the best shows on Apple TV as well. See, there are good TV shows. We couldn't do this with the movies for very long, could we?
No, not at all.
One other television story, and that is, I don't know if you watch Gavin and Stacey.
Loved it. I watched it. I remember when it came out, watched it. I watched it again when the 2nd season came out. Watched the 3rd season, the specials. Absolutely love this TV show. And we've got a finale coming, haven't we, this year? And they're saying it is the finale.
It is the finale. So for Americans and people not from the UK, Gavin and Stacey was a sitcom set between Billericay in Essex near London and South Wales Barry near Cardiff. And it was sort of a culture clash thing. It starred James Corden, probably the thing that made him famous as much as anything else. Before he went on to become a chat show host. It's written by James Corden and, I've forgotten her name. Ruth Jones. Between them. It's a very funny show. I'm really glad that it's coming back. There was a cliffhanger in 2019, possibly a little before that, about there was a marriage proposal between Smithy and Nessa, the 2 characters played by Ruth and James Corden. So this is the finale. We're going to have a big one. I think it's on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and we'll finally find out what happened. And then that's it. It's done.
It's Christmas Day, 9 p.m. on BBC.
Yeah,
so I'm super looking forward to this. I know my wife's looking forward to this. And we don't watch a lot of TV together, but this was one TV show we definitely did watch. And it did go through the generations a bit, I think. It wasn't just our generation. I know my parents quite enjoyed it. So yeah, super looking forward to this. Can't wait.
Yeah, my kids both love Gavin and Stacey. They like, I think it's more the Welsh culture thing that they like as much as anything else. They do a really good job of that. And it's a great show. If you can get hold of it anywhere and you haven't seen Gavin and Stacey, it's a good time sort of binging through it.
I think it's all on the iPlayer. And it is a bit like Ted Lasso in a way, where you've got the 2 cultures coming together and a bit of humour around that. Like you have Ted come over from the US and he's in England and he goes, how many countries are in this country? Are you referring to the United Kingdom? And they're like 4, and he's like, okay. And you kind of have the same with the Welsh and the Essex cultures coming together. I think it's really good.
Sticking with Welsh culture, yesterday I went to a pantomime, which I haven't been to in years. The kids wanted to go and see the pantomime. Yes, they're both over the age of 18, but they fancied seeing the pantomime. So I went to see Jack and the Beanstalk at Swansea Grand Theatre, featuring Scott Mills, who is a Radio 2 DJ who won Race Across the World, you might recall.
He did, and I was interested. He's having a year, isn't he? Won Race Across the World. He's in Jack and the Beanstalk in Swansea, and he's going to take over Zoe Ball's slot on Drive Time. I think I've got that right, or Breakfast Show.
You've got that right.
So he's having a great year. I just noticed on the advert, it says featuring an incredible digital set for Jack and the Beanstalk. How was the digital set?
The seats were kind of right up at the top circle off to the left-hand side, so we couldn't see it all. But I don't know when the last time you went to a theatre is, but actually they do digital broadcasting on the back of the stage and across sort of the sets that they build. So, for example, you can have 3 layers of set with like an arch at the front, and on the front arch they can put snow on that, and then they can put monsters on the one behind that, and then the very back wall is like a cinema screen where they can put more onto it. So it lets them be a lot more interactive and be a bit sort of more expansive about what's going on in the theatre. And of course, it's a theatre, you know. Actors come in from the wings and they do the dances and they go off, and with a pantso you're never sure how much of it is scripted and how much of it is actually broken, that they're all sort of creasing themselves laughing. Or in last night's performance, for example, the beanstalk failed to inflate as a, you know, and sort of the crucial thing before the break. I thoroughly enjoyed this, actually. We have a local legend here who's there called Kev Johns, who is he's a radio I forget it. He's on The Wave, which is the local radio station. Very big in the community. He always goes out and does lots of charity things. Is always the dame in a pantomime. And as usual, Kev Johns knocked it out of the park. But Scott Mills was great. They had a couple of jokes about the fact that he was now going to be Radio 2 in The Breakfast, taking over from Zoe Ball. And they even got a Race Across the World reference in. And all the other cast were great. They gave her their all. It wasn't a packed theatre. I'd say it was about half empty. But, you know, there's something very British about a pantomime, I think. And the kids clearly enjoyed the hell out of it. So, yeah, good time.
Nice to take your kids to the panto. I think if my kids were the same age as yours and they wanted to go, I'd be like, yeah, all right, let's go.
Pretty much exactly that. Have you got anything for us in media?
Sadly not. I'm just finishing off the Strike TV series because I've read all the books, so I did just want to see what they did. But I'm so annoyed with all the weird changes they've made, because some of them I don't think really save them anything. And I get why they've cut out some storylines. The books are very thick. But I'm still frustrated, I think, with some of the choices made. But I do want to see it through. So the Ink Black Heart launched earlier this week. I'm not sure if I'd enjoy them at all if I hadn't read the books, because I can see why you bailed very quickly on the first season. But yeah.
That's a shame, really. I did see a thing in The Guardian this week about how they weren't particularly well done, despite the acting talent on the screen, that everybody was very good, that it was lacking something.
I think they could just do more on the story to keep the right bits and cut the other bits, if that makes sense. I just don't think they've got that quite right. It's a shame, because the books are. I think the books are really good, if not a little bit on the long side.
That sounds like J.K. Rowling. She's a bit of an overwriter.
She does. Yeah, she does. Yeah, need an editor sometimes.
As so many of us do. Should we do a little bit of games? We don't have much.
There's not much going on in games. I must confess, I've not been feeling very well, and my enthusiasm to play anything has massively diminished, if I'm being honest.
I could tell you all manner of things about Call of Duty Black Ops if you wanted, but I think you should tell us about the Nintendo Switch 2 instead.
Nintendo Switch 2, so it should be announced before March next year, so not long, only 3 months. We believe it's going to be called the Nintendo Switch 2, but Nintendo is just calling it the successor to the Switch, so it'll be interesting. But there's lots of talk here around the shape of it. It looks large. It feels like it's going to look largely like it already looks, if that makes sense, which is good. There might well be a dock that does 4K, but again, looks very similar to what we've already got. So it kind of feels like Nintendo taking what they've already got, hopefully some better internals, and hopefully a better output, which are all the two things really that the Switch was never great on, even when it was first launched. It didn't have great internals, and the output was never fantastic. It didn't do 4K. So if they manage to pull this off, I think that would be fantastic. I'm certainly going to pony up for one of these. I'm curious to know what's going to be the title games, because Mario Kart, we've had one Mario Kart for this whole duration. So are they going to do a new Mario Kart, for example? If they do, that's going to be an instant purchase for me. At my staff do, just last week, one of my colleagues brought a Nintendo Switch and a dock and 4 controllers along for everybody to play Mario Kart on a big projector in the evening. So that was kind of cool.
That Mario Kart's not even new Mario Kart. It's the Wii U, one.
So they've really milked it well, haven't they? They've got great value out of that investment.
There has been 2 Zelda games, all right, or possibly even 3 Zelda games.
There's been 2 proper Breath of the Wild-esque games, and then there's been some other remakes and what have you on the fringes.
Yeah, but it's an old console now. It's time they replaced it.
100%, they should definitely replace it. I was at the cinema recently, I can't remember if I mentioned this, but they were advertising, buy a Switch for Christmas. It's like, now is not the time to be buying a Switch. So
this is Nintendo's pattern, though, with the DS kept hung on and on and on, the Wii hung on and on and on, and the Wii U was the wrong console and didn't sell, therefore it's the reason it vanished so quickly.
Yep. I think what they're going to do is they're going to announce it in March, and then you can see a year from now, everybody's going to want one. It'll probably come out, there won't be a lot for it, but by the time you get around to the next festive season, this is going to be the one for the kids. Is my view, probably for the younger generation predominantly.
I don't disagree with you, and I just got, as an aside, the Verge is still driving me crazy with its pop-up at the bottom.
Yeah, I do like the Verge. Maybe I should subscribe, but they are a little aggressive, to say the least.
They are. Somebody that's also aggressive are Valve. Valve are quite good with their sales, and today is the day, apparently, that the winter sale is going to start. So, December the 19th, Steam sale forecast start. It may have already started by the time we finish this podcast or by the time you listen to this podcast. But yeah, this is an interesting thing for me. I've sort of struggled with Steam sales the last couple of years. I've kind of got everything I want, but I am genuinely giving Satisfactory the side eye and thinking that might be something I want to pick up over Christmas.
Yeah, agreed. I want to give that a go. Sale starts at 6 p.m. tonight by the looks of it here in the UK. I'm waiting for Civilization 7 and Commando's Origins, and they both come out first quarter, well, potentially first quarter next year. So there's not too much I want to get, but Satisfactory does look interesting. I do fancy a game of making something, and you've brought the website up while we're talking.
I have, because I try to be reactive to things. It does look interesting. I'm with you on Civ 7. I'm not with you on Commandos, but there's no point in looking at the Civ sale for the Steam sale for Civ 7, because it's not going to be a thing.
No, it's not a thing yet, is it? But yeah, I just fancy something. I haven't played a game that I've really got into for a while, and I want something to get my teeth into.
Yep, I think that's fair enough. That all we've really got in games. Good grief.
It's bad days. I'm just not playing enough, I think, and I've not had when I finish work, I don't generally want to sit in front of another screen. So we've been playing board games in my house. We can talk about Monopoly and who knows where and card games, but you probably don't want to hear about them.
These are all valid things, Chris, but I don't think it's right in keeping with the theme of the show. But I think we could do a board game special if you want.
I can talk through the mechanics of Mega Monopoly because my son is very much enjoying that game right now.
Fair enough. Instead, should we do a short main show
and
give the people some time back for a change? So, as we come to the end of 2024, it's probably worth reflecting a little bit on what Apple has done in terms of the products they've released and all the rest of it. This isn't us picking our products of the year, which we'll probably do next week or the week after. We should probably plan that a little more carefully. But this is just looking at the things that they have released in order and then what we've actually bought. That's the plan, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so first up, I don't know if these are any sort of order, but let's go through these in the way that we've got them in the show notes. Products this year released: Apple Watch Series 10. Thoughts on this?
Looks all right to me, but it looks like every other Apple Watch, if I'm being honest. Like if somebody was wearing one right now, I probably couldn't tell whether it was a Series 10 or a 9 or an 8. And I know the 10's smaller, lighter. It does feel like they've ticked a lot of boxes, but I've not seen one in public. I've not seen my friends with one.
I'm exactly the same. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an Apple Watch 10 and an Apple Watch 9. Just before we move, I give a few more thoughts on that. They also didn't update the Apple Watch Ultra this year. It's still the same Apple Watch Ultra 2, and the Apple Watch SE is the same old Apple Watch SE. So the only thing that's actually changed in the lineup this year is the Apple Watch Series 10. Right?
And the Ultra you can have in black, which I have seen. A friend of mine does have it in black, and it looks nice. But it looks way too big. I can't believe I ever had one, if I'm honest. Now, I've not had an Apple Watch for so long. It's over a year now. Yeah. You've got bigger wrists than me, I think. But it just looks massive. But the black with the orange I like the colour scheme. It's very nice. But it just feels like a bit like with the iPhone. The products just have matured to a point. They're not bringing much to the party at the minute. Maybe everybody's off writing Apple Intelligence stuff, but the hardware just isn't really moving forwards that much.
You don't need to buy an Apple Watch every year. I think almost at this point, every sort of 4 to 5 years may be sufficient. I will say my Apple Watch Ultra is... Well, my Apple Watch Ultra I think is 3 years old now, and I'm beginning to notice the battery hit. I'm having to charge it every day, which I didn't have to do. It used to be every 2 days I could get away with the Ultra, but now it's every day. Equally, that could be some software glitch that's crept into it over the months and the versions and the betas and the rest of it all the same. But specifically on the 10, I think making it thinner is a good thing. It's a compelling product if you haven't upgraded in the last, let's be 3 to 5 years. Then it's useful, and you find value in the fitness tracking, or you find value in having your wallet on your wrist, or if you have a cellular one, having that contact when you're out running, whatever you do. There's value in that. It's worth upgrading it. I don't think they need to make quite so much of it. I think it's just become a background thing that people will buy on a regular interval in the same way they buy their phone. It's certainly not the second coming of the Apple Watch, the Series 10.
No, sadly, it was a bit anticlimactic.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Let's move on and talk about the iPad Mini, which was also new this year, which I'd forgotten it was new this year, to be honest.
And it was the most recent iPad to get updated. Back in October, I think, they just dropped a press release with it. And look, again, anticlimactic. It's just the old iPad with an A17 Pro chip in it, which is great, and it runs Apple Intelligence. Not that you should rush and buy it, but it's a great form factor. However, one of us has got the 11-inch Pro, and I'm glad I bought the 11-inch Pro because it's got the way better screen. But this is a great device. I think if you can use it for taking notes, you just want something pretty portable. I think this is a great iPad.
I struggle with this one slightly. I think it's too expensive for what it is. I think if you're going to make a small, cheap iPad, make a small, cheap iPad. This seems to be a small, expensive iPad that is too compromised compared to the other devices around it.
I think you've summarised it really well, by the way.
I think even if you're a child, I think this is a bad device to buy. You're actually better with the next thing. Is the iPad 10 on this list?
No, because it came out the previous year.
Yeah, I think the iPad 10 is a better device, frankly, than this.
I would agree with you. For most people that aren't into the iPad world, get the iPad 10. It's a pretty good iPad. It's got some great accessories so you can customize it. It's got some good colors, but it will do 90% of what you want. The iPad 10 is the one most people should buy.
Yeah, 329 quid for the base iPad. And I don't understand why anyone would buy an iPad mini over that. I genuinely don't.
It's the only size. It's the only reason you're going to buy it, because you want that really small one. But I would agree with you, get the 10.
I think it's a too compromised device. We're almost giving Christmas advice now. Don't buy an iPad mini for anyone. Buy an iPad 10 if you're going to buy one.
Unless you want Apple Intelligence.
I think we've been through that as well. That's not.
I was being a bit sarky, I think.
Anybody that's spending, $329 to $500 on an iPad is not necessarily looking for that. Do you want to tell us about the M4 iPad Pro? You seem like just the man for the job.
So as you were talking, I was just edging over my desk to grab there's my bench on it in my black and white. Here is my iPad Pro M4 edition. I've got the 11-inch one, the small one, as you can probably see as I'm holding it. I love this device. I did buy a pretty specced out iPad, if I'm honest. The only thing I didn't get was the reflective nano texture coating. With the non-reflective coating, I guess it is. I love this thing. So I've got the 11-inch one. I only really bought it because I wanted something new. I had the M1 before. They released it with an M4 in it. So I went all in, and it's fantastic. I love the size. I don't miss the big one that you've got in your hand because it's just too big in my opinion. Occasionally I miss it when I'm doing some work remotely, but 90% of the time I've got it docked. I've got a screen on it. It's a great device. It's really quick. It's really light. Is it allowing me to do anything I couldn't do on last year's iPad? Probably not, because it looks exactly the same. I've also got the Apple Pencil Pro, if that comes out on the camera. It's very good, but I'm not an artist. I've just got it for doing the crossword and making notes. So I love it. I'm super happy with it, but I only need one iPad in my life, and I've got it. And I would take it on holiday because it's so small. It's a no-brainer just to chuck it in the bag and take it everywhere with me. And I can read on it. I can do the newspaper on it. It's a great device, and for me it works. And for me, it's the right bridge between the iPad mini and the iPad 10 that we just talked about, because it's probably the same size as the iPad 10 because it's got smaller bezels and what have you. It's a fantastic device, but it is a lot of money, and most people should not buy this device.
Yeah, I think this is my problem with it, really. I agree with you. There's a certain segment of people that should absolutely consider an iPad Pro. I think artistic types are people in constrained IT situations like you are, who have had to make a certain amount of choices. I believe, and you're testament to it, there are people who can get their work done on an iPad. And I think that's very true of people like yourself. It's very true of, some of your employees who are out in building sites who might need it to do X, Y, or Z. You could be a football coach and you need it for the mapping or for being able to draw on the screen. I think if you're a creative type, it makes sense as well. I think for students, you probably need a laptop too. But actually, if you're going into lectures, very quickly jotting down some notes and things like that, having the Instant On, having the cellular within that, I think it's a great device. Having said all that, the price is a massive
barrier to entry, isn't it?
It really is, and you got to think there's a world around 500 quid where they could bring a slightly improved screen to the iPad 10, bump up the size a little bit of the standard iPad. That would be really good. But Apple's not going to do that. They want to differentiate the market, and people are willing to spend £2,000 on an iPad. Why not let them? So and the rest. I know that's the face you're making, Chris. I appreciate that.
It's just a reminder that I spent so much on it, but I'm happy to spend it on it because I use it every day. If it was a device I wasn't sure about, I wouldn't. And look, the other iPad that Apple released at the same time was the M2 iPad Air, which is probably what most people should get. You can get it in the two sizes. So if you're really going to use one and do all your work on it, most people should get the Air and see if it works for them, because it's not too much money. And if you're really not sure, get the iPad 10. And I think that's it. If you're not sure, get the iPad 10. If you think you can make your world work on it, get the Air. And if you know you want the Pro, if you know what I mean, like you know why you want the Pro.
I think this is all fair, and you know my opinions on iPads. I think that as consumption devices, they're terrific, and for playing bilateral, they're awesome. And Slay the Spire, I haven't mentioned that in a few weeks. My problem with them all is this starting price. I've got the iPad Air in front of me at the moment. It's £590, which is okay, fine. I think if you push the boat out, you want a good iPad that can do the thing you wanted to do, that's fine. It starts at 128 gigs. That is not a lot of storage by the time you want to, throw a couple of photographs in there. You're going traveling. You're off to Finland. You want to take some movies for the kids. You got to download some stuff. You probably want to be looking at sort of 512 gigs as the starter.
It should start at 256. I think all iOS devices should start at least 256 or max at 512.
Yep. So by the time you put a bit of storage in here, you're at £900 for an iPad. Now you're into laptop territory, firmly into laptop territory, which also only comes at 256, but you can take a memory stick with it. I suppose these days you can take a memory stick with an iPad as well, but you're less likely to think like that. Most of it is going to be contained on there, and applications' abilities to play well with memory sticks on iPads aren't as robust as they are on the Mac.
Not at all. You're right. Most people should probably go and get a Mac or something. The one benefit of the iPad is you have to do very little to look after it. It kind of works, but it's very constrained.
It is. And just revisiting what I was saying before about the iPad 10, which I think is a great device, to put a decent amount of storage in that takes the price from £329 to £479. And even that decent amount of storage is only 256 gig. So this for me is an area, this isn't our sum up of Apple of the year, this is just what they've released. This is where they're going a bit wrong for me at the moment, is the swinging price increases on modest amounts of SSD space.
Agreed. I do agree with you. I was just looking at mine. So I bought the 2 terabyte model, and I'm using 1.2 terabytes of it. But I'm only using it because I download all my photos to it, and I've got a huge amount of media on there because I've just downloaded stuff when we've been on holiday, and I've never really taken anything off. I could easily police that way better. But it's just nice to have a bit of selection when you're on the plane or in a hotel.
That's fair. Tell us about the iPhone 16 while I go off and have a look at how much space I use on my iPad.
So the iPhone 16 came out in September. It's an incremental update. What was interesting this year, very similar to the Pro model. So the 16 comes in some great colours. They did nail some of the colours. Still a little muted, but better than they have been. They slightly changed the camera orientation. We got the 2 on top rather than being diagonal in a big square. I think that was quite a nice design update. And it's got the camera control button. It's a great device. Most people should probably buy this device. You can get it in the 2 sizes, the 6.1 or the 6.7. It's a great phone. A lot of money, but a really good phone, and should last somebody 2, 3, 4 years.
So I think we can cover the Pro and the standard iPhone in this discussion. The Pro Max is the Pro and the Pro Max and the standard iPhone. Don't buy an iPhone Pro Max or Pro unless you've got really good reason to do it. If you're a videographer or you need to record LUTs on your videos settings or something like that, I think fine. If you can really, really justify a reason for the big zoom lens, fine. But other than that, I think the iPhone 16 is more or less the perfect iPhone. Nobody should ever look any further than that.
If it had an always-on screen, I'd probably be with you.
I don't really see that much benefit in the always-on screen. I've had it for over a year now on my iPhone 15 Pro Max, and it's fine. I could live without it, though.
I possibly could. I do like it. That's the one thing I do like, and it will come at some point. Should filter down.
You know what you were saying about your Apple Watch Ultra? You don't really miss it after a little bit of time. I suspect it would be the same with this. You lived without an always-on screen for a very long time and didn't really feel the lack. My old habit of every so often just tapping the screen to see what the time was worked perfectly well. There's very little going on the screen all the time that I need to be aware of, where I glance down and I go, in those hundreds of collapsed notifications, I've turned notification summaries off with Apple Intelligence, by the way, that wouldn't be, I'd have to pick it up and scroll through them to find the thing I was looking for anyway, that the always on actually gives me. It's just a nice sort of posh feature that you've got it more than anything else.
Yeah, you're probably right. I probably need to actually live with a phone that doesn't have it for a period of time to get comfortable with it without it. But these are great phones. I think Apple had a good year, but very incremental year.
M4 MacBook Pro.
Didn't see this coming so quickly. Obviously, they bought the M3 MacBook Pros out at the start of the year, and then straight into the M4 ones at the end of the year. I think if I've got that right for the M3s that did come out this year. So amazing that we've jumped that whole M3 cycle. These look great devices, very incremental again. But if you're coming from an M1 to an M4, there's probably some good upgrades in there. Performance, obviously. Slightly higher storage now because the base M4 one has 512 storage, before it had 256, and it's got a way brighter screen and Thunderbolt 5. So some great upgrades in there, I think, but it's probably not worth year-on-year upgrading to. I think Apple have got to that point now with the maturity in most of their lineups that they're probably not worth going year-on-year. And I thought I'd get an iPhone every year, and I've fallen off of that. And I think we are seeing a lot more incremental from Apple.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm kind of with you. I think the real benefits in the M4 lineup, apart from the chip, which we'll talk about in a minute, is that they increased the memory across the line, but actually they made the base model MacBook Pro actually useful. All the Thunderbolt ports work in it now. You can drive more than one display with it now. It's got the nice high resolution screen, the Retina screen, the same as the rest of the lineup do. I think it's a good laptop. The problem, as always, with the bottom end of any of the Apple Pro lines is that what's just beneath it in the MacBook Air is so good that there's a very fine window between this actually being a good investment, unless you need the power of the better one. The MacBook Air does 98% of what this does, and an M4 MacBook Air is going to be even more compelling. So now is the chance, if you've been waiting for one, or your company's going, we only buy MacBook Pros. I think the base model MacBook Pro is a great device. Great device.
Yeah, the base one's gone from the don't buy it to this is probably the one most people should buy now.
I 100% agree. Having had a 16-inch MacBook Pro, they're very good computers. I don't know how many people actually need a 16-inch MacBook Pro. I don't know that they're very big, and I don't think the increase in screen and weight is justified over the sort of the additional portability and the bagability, for want of a better word, of the 14-inch. So I think they're all very good computers. If you're willing to drop £3,199 on a M4 Pro Max with a terabyte of storage and 36 gigs of RAM, you know who you are. You need a device that's like that.
It's a niche market, isn't it?
I don't think very many people do, because the base model of this range is actually so capable. Frankly, the MacBook Air is so capable that you don't really need to be going up to the Ultra Max end of the chip spectrum.
No, I concur with you. I think Apple have done such a good job that most people will be well served with the base chips. You know if you need the bigger chips.
You do. Moving on, we also got a new Mac Mini this year. The Mac Mini is distinctive in the sense that it has actually had a redesign as well. It's not just the same old refreshed outside as the MacBook Pros and the iPads and everything else was. The Mac Mini is all new.
Yeah, other than the Mac Pro, this was the last one in the previous casing of its Intel brethren, I would suggest. And I think 90% of it they've nailed. I think the one question mark is possibly on the headphone jack being at the front and not around the back. But what a great device. You've got one and you're speaking to us now through the power of your Mac Mini. I've got one on order, which is hopefully coming in the new year. And I'm super looking forward to it. I haven't looked forward to a new Mac in a long time, not really, and I'm quite looking forward to this. It looks like it's going to be powerful. I've got a little stand on the back of my monitor where it's going to fit. I'm really looking forward to it because I hope this machine I'll keep for a number of years, because I think Mac Minis, generally you buy it and you can keep it for a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That for me, they nailed this really well with everything except the price on storage, but that's a personal bugbear of mine. The base Mac Mini is an absolute bargain at £600. I think it's got an amazing chip in there. I think the ports are good enough. Thunderbolt 4 is more than good enough for most people. I think it's a terrific device. If you've got any old screen lying around or you wanted a server, it's absolutely the way to go. Don't upgrade the storage. Just get the base model. Plug in, an external SSD or something like that through one of the Thunderbolt 4 ports. Click that option to stay install apps to that, and you're going to have a wonderful time. I think it's a great device. $599 nailed it. It does get very pricey very quickly, as all Apple products do. That's to be expected. For me, this is, without giving away when we come at the end of the year show, for me, this is the best Apple product I've released in years.
Yeah, I think so. And it seems to have universal praise, to be fair. Yeah. It's a great little device. And like you say, if somebody's thinking about a Mac, this is the Mac you buy. If you're not sure you want a desktop Mac, get this one, try it all out. It's not a big commit, and it'll have a good resale value too.
I agree. Should we talk about the Vision Pro?
Well, I was going to say, just before we do Vision Pro, should we just do the iMac also went to M4, very minor speed bump, but just rounds out Apple. It does feel like the M4 is going to be in everything. Hopefully by this time next year. And it will be the first time that that they've had the same chip in all their products, maybe forever. But it'll be great to get everything on the M4, I think, because it seems such a good lineup. Curious to see what they do with the M4 Ultra that should come in the Studio and the Pro. But the iMac remains a good machine. I saw one the other day. They are beautiful. They just need a bigger screen version, as we've discussed.
Yeah, I think it's a bit unfair to the iMac, really, that they only offer it in the smaller screen size. And I suspect not many people buy all-in-one computers anymore. Anybody who's looking for an all-in-one computer buys a laptop. End.
I think you're there. I do wish they might get rid of the chin and just put the whole computer behind the screen. I think that could be quite a cool look. But there you go.
It's still crazy to me that this computer is as thin as it is, that they can't put the headphone jack on the back because it would poke through the front of the thing. It's got to go on the side. It's
thinner than my studio display, which is crazy.
It's a great computer. Again, if you know you need one, or you want it for your reception desk, or you've got the designer who must have a Mac and you want a half decent screen for them, 4.5K screen, I think, on these. Good computer, too small. Great chip.
Beautiful case.
Lovely colours. Put those colours and some other things, please. Can I have those on my iPhones as well, please? On the Pro iPhones. Give us those colours. Thank you.
That blue one. I want that blue one. It looks so good. It's such a good dark blue. I love it.
Even the pink is nice.
Agreed.
Apple Vision Pro only came out this year.
Yeah. So it came out in America first, and then came out here in the summer, I think it was. Neither of us bought one. I think both. I was probably way more interested than you, but it's £3,500 here in the UK. I was probably more compelled with it because I know I could work in it, like it would run all my iPad apps in essence and Office. And I've tried one. I've not bought one. I think it's a cool device. I think it's well overpriced. And I'm still not sure how my mind is with blanking out the rest of the world around me. Not just me not seeing it, but them not seeing me. And I don't know anybody that's got one.
No, and I feel a bit sad for this device. I was a bit down on it because I was worried about its application to the world. And I think that's proven to be the case. Apple's relationship with the developers has not helped this. The complexity of buying this has not helped this. That you need inserts or prescriptions for and then the size of your face needs to be measured with an iPhone app, and the straps they've sold with it don't appear to do the greatest job in the world of being comfortable on your face. If you leave them in a drawer, they discharge their batteries in about 3 hours and just switch off, so you need to sort of fire them up again. That's just the physical aspects of wearing the device, and then you've got the lack of content. And not just of apps, but of media, of compelling reasons to use them. And to be fair to Apple, I very rarely am to them about the Apple Vision Pro. The latest update, the beta update of giving widescreen 5K effectively screens on your Mac when you're sat using it, so if you're in a confined space like an airplane, there's actually a compelling use case there for somebody. It's not going to be as sharp as an Apple Studio display of any caliber, but actually giving somebody the ability to have a massively more screen space in a limited environment, I think is a really useful goal for the product. But I'm afraid, I'm going to call it now, this product is dead until they release an Apple Vision, not a Pro, that's about 1,500 quid tops, has content, has apps. If you can't watch Netflix on this thing or YouTube on this thing, it's a dead product. It's a consumption device. It's not a production device, except in very specific situations, and it's not even a very good one.
I'm amazed we're exiting the year and it costs the same amount as we started the year. I expected an iPhone moment. You remember when they brought the iPhone out, very early doors, they managed to get the price down on it. And I thought we were going to see that with this, just to try and get a bit more momentum behind it, by having a user base. And that's the problem. There isn't a user base there. And for me, I think they need to take about $1,000 off it. That's where they need to get. I think it's still a conceptual device, but I like the idea of a spatial compute platform. I think it's cool. I just think they need to just get it to a price point where people can swallow that pill, and hopefully more users will drive more content and more apps, but we're just not seeing it. And it is telling Netflix aren't there. How have Apple not just turned around to Netflix and gone, boom, just get this done, will you?
Yeah, well, they've got to sell a few people their £28,000 cameras.
Yeah, there is that, I guess. But even I did enjoy just watching a film sat in a fake cinema inside. I thought that was one of the best reasons to have one.
I mean, they've also, we're in danger of getting thoroughly derailed, but they've also let the gaming piece go completely. The fact this doesn't pair with a decent, accurate controller is a problem.
There's just no there's no compelling games for it. They should have got all the media nailed, then gone after games, then gone after productivity.
I mean, it's sad for me that the most interesting thing is the expanded workspace. I could see that if I was sat in a plane or I was in my office and I just wanted to separate myself from everything, fine. But that's not a good enough reason to spend £3,500.
It does sound cool, and with the latest updates, you can now have super widescreen. That sounds cool, but I'd love to know what the practicalities are and the sharpness. I think that's probably my biggest concern.
Yeah, and you can't run numbers on it. You've got to fire up Excel, and only the Microsoft apps are the only ones that work on it, not the Apple apps.
That is stupid.
It's just bonkers. I think Keynote's the only Apple app that works on it, right?
Keynote is correct. But why haven't they fixed, that's an easy fix, surely. Just recompile it. You've got it on the iPad native, make it native on the Vision Pro. I can't imagine there's something in there that's stopping them. I find that really weird.
You would have thought the most valuable company in the world would be able to find a couple of developers for their most important platform.
Yeah, potentially.
Anyway, what have you bought this year out of all these new products we've talked about?
So we're already aware I've got my M4 iPad Pro, and I love it. And I did get it in black, actually. I wanted the silver one, but the black one came with black cables. And I wanted to get the black keyboard, so that all went quite well together. And I've bought, for my wife, I got her an iPhone 16 because she was due an upgrade, so we could pass her phone down to my children. And then my father-in-law actually bought him an M2 MacBook Air. Price was a concern, but he was going from a 10-year-old Intel computer and just needed something Apple Silicon based. And so I got him a MacBook Air with a terabyte hard drive in it. Loves it. So that's what we've bought this year. So not a huge amount as a family, but some great devices which will be in the family for years to come. They're not devices that will get updated every year.
Fair. So everybody's happy with them. You're reasonably happy with the purchases that you've made. Good feedback. Yeah, good feedback from the father-in-law. Wifely ambitions are happy. You haven't completely destroyed her life by forcing her to have a new device. So tick, and you're happy with your iPad.
I'm not sure she's realised her phone's any different. She knows she got a new phone, but it looks and feels exactly the same. Camera control is lost on her. She just does what she's done for years.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. For me, obviously work bought me an M3 MacBook Pro, which I'm relatively happy with, I got to say. I don't feel it's actually any better, faster, or anything than any of the previous Apple Silicon Macs I've had before. My M1 Apple Silicon MacBook Pro, which was the 16-inch, as I said already, was a bit heavy and a bit big, but actually a very good computer. Lots of RAM, very fast. We recorded this podcast on it a couple of times. It worked really, really well. So, great laptop. I think the M3 I think I've enjoyed it being a smaller device, a lighter device than I have any sort of benefits to it being an M3. Obviously, I bought the M4 Mac Mini, which we're recording this podcast on right now. It's a terrific device. It's hanging a net under my desk. It works well with the screen that I bought to go with it. It's very quiet. I do have a concern about Apple devices and their ability to copy files around on network shares. I've been doing a lot of that. Maybe that's a feature for next week's podcast. I've been meddling on my NAS devices again. So I bought a new one and I've been copying stuff around. And it's doing some weird things in terms of I'm going to go to sleep now, choosing what drives it's going to disconnect. And just the overall speed, 2.5 gig network, when I copy things around between Linux or Windows machines with a 2.5 gigs cards, and it's very quick. You get a very steady experience. It's a bit erratic on the Mac, so I don't know if that's a software thing, not a hardware thing, I'm quite sure, but it's something I'm keeping an eye on. However, recording this podcast, so far since I got it, has been fine every week, so that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, it's been night and day, hasn't it? And it does look a great device. I'm excited to get mine, I think. I can't wait.
I wish they offered it in space black, though.
Yeah, maybe. I'm only putting a face because I've got a Silver Stew display that I'm going to plug it into and it will go nicely together.
Yeah, but a choice is always good. Not that I see it. Like I say, it's under the desk, but there we are. And then last of all, my eldest daughter got an iPhone 16. I think I talked about it on the podcast. It let me play with camera control. It's a great phone. I got nothing else to say. And the colour is beautiful. The blue, the aquamarine, I think it is just gorgeous. It's a nice strong blue, and more things in that colour, please, Apple. That's it. That's all I got to say.
It's a fantastic phone. Everybody should buy that phone. It's got so much in it. It's a fantastic device.
Brilliant. App of the week.
Do it.
This is very simple. Those of you listening on Macs or Linux machines already have this. It's built into your terminal. It's called rsync. It's a very clever copy command, basically. So if you have a folder that you want to copy to a backup or to another USB drive or something else that you on a regular basis, and you only want to copy the files that have changed, you type rsync, you type the folder it's coming from, the folder it's going to, and it will work out what's changed and only update the things that are there. It's very clever, it's built in, it's been there for years. It's a great command. I've put a link in the show notes to it's the least interesting link I've ever put in, to the rsync Linux man page. So if you type man rsync on your Mac in terminal or in your Linux box, you will see this. It's a great command. Not enough people know about it. rsync for the win.
So whilst you were talking, I was looking confused. I was trying to remember what the Windows equivalent is, and it's called Robocopy, and we used to use that all the time to do something very similar.
There you go. But it's a great little command. You can get sort of graphical front ends to it. Like your NAS, for example, I know Chris has a Synology NAS. The way it backs up if you have another Synology NAS kicking around is it actually uses rsync under the covers to do that.
Okay, interesting. Do you want a fun fact about my NAS?
Tell me.
So I've got a very old Synology, probably 10, 11 years old. I found the box for it the other day in the loft. The box has been thrown out. It came with a CD. That shows how old it was. It had a CD in the box. I don't know what you're going to do with the CD. I recycled it, but that just showed me how old my NAS. But it's still running. It's been, and to me, it was a lot of money at the time I bought it, but here I am 10 years later, still going.
Fair play. Thing of the week.
Thing of the week. So I've could have put this in media, I guess. We watched a Christmas film. I bought a Netflix subscription for 1 month, so we could have some different content. And we watched That Christmas. It's an animated film. It's a good family film. Just quite enjoyed it. My wife and my kids watched it. It was just nice to watch something different for a change rather than just Home Alone. So would recommend. Quite a nice art style. It's on Netflix. Go watch it.
Fair enough. Sounds good. Always good to get a TV recommendation. Should have gone in media. I'll let it go.
Yeah, I was trying to keep something for Thing of the Week.
Fair enough. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
I think so. So if anyone wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot, or he's on Blue Sky at g5maniac.bsky.social. I'm at _CGP at mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube if you go to wakefromsleep.com and click on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.